Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to talk about a few audiobooks that I've really enjoyed recently. So actually I've been listening to audiobooks quite a lot since the last few weeks of 2018 and I've been really enjoying the form. I think audiobooks is really great when I'm tired, like my eyes are tired. I also find it very useful, especially when I'm reading a lot for school, like course literature and academic writings, and I'm not really in the mood to spend more time focusing on text, but I still want to be able to read. And in those respects, audiobooks has been really helpful and useful for me, and I know a lot of people have various different reasons for listening to audiobooks. I just find that the form is really great, and especially if there's good narrators. I have been really enjoying the form and have found 3 books, and specifically sort of 3 specific titles as well as 3 narrators that I really love and that I really wanted to recommend to other people. So first up is the most obvious one, and it is Stephen Fry narrating the Sherlock Holmes books. I listened to I think 2 of them during the summer and really enjoyed his narration. I think Stephen Fry is a fantastic narrator, as most probably know from the Harry Potter series, and I do really enjoy his narration of the Harry Potter books, but I am not one of those people who are constantly rereading or re-listening to the Harry Potter books. So while I'm all for those books, I think that for me personally it's been really interesting to rediscover the Sherlock Holmes stories through Stephen Fry's narration. He does Watson especially well, and obviously Watson is most of the time he is telling the stories of the specific cases that he and Sherlock Holmes have been working on, and I think that he really gets the admiration in Watson's voice in regard to Sherlock Holmes. He does characterization of the voices really well, and I think you really get the sense that you're with them. I was listening to the short story collection, the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, I think, and I just felt like I was completely transported in his narration, and the stories themselves are really fun as well. So I would highly recommend that if you're at all interested in the Sherlock Holmes stories, or you just like the character and never read the books, I would highly recommend the audiobooks narrated by Stephen Fry. You can get the whole, all of them in one credit on Audible, and I highly recommend checking them out, because I feel like Stephen Fry is, just in general, a really good narrator and speaker, and he you can tell that he's really enthusiastic about the Sherlock Holmes books, which obviously helps with a narrator being like caring for the stories that they're telling. With the most obvious out of the way, we have my second one, which is Nevermore and Wundersmith by Jessica Townsend and narrated by Gemma, Whelan. I've mentioned this a couple of times since I discovered the audiobook of Nevermore in late autumn last year, and continued on with the trilogy or series. I just said trilogy out of nowhere. I don't know how many books are gonna be in the series, but it is a middle grade series written by Jessica Townsend, following a young girl, Morrigan Crow, who is swept up into this other world with where there's magic. And you've all probably heard of Nevermore and Wundersmith. They're really fantastic, really imaginative and magical middle grade stories with some dark twists and a lot of comedy. The thing I love about Gemma Whelan's narration is the fact that she doesn't just tell the story as the book tells it. She doesn't just read it out loud, is what I'm trying to say. She adds character into their voices, and she can create characters, so many different characters, completely. So each character feels completely well-rounded and fully realized through her voice, through the way the volume that she speaks in, the speed that she's telling these these lines that the characters have in the dialogue, the way she sighs or she sort of drags on certain words. It's just so well done in form of narration. I feel like Gemma Whelan's narration is the kind of narration that would appeal to young children. Obviously the middle grade books are written for a younger audience, so I think you would find a lot of kids who would enjoy her narration because it's quite playful. It's very interactive and fun, but I think a lot of adults would also really enjoy and have fun with her narration and her obvious, like, some of the more over-the-top things while not being cutesy, which I think is a fine line to walk, especially with a book that is targeted towards a younger audience. The Nevermore books are really great, but I enjoyed them much more in the audiobook than I think I would in the physical copy. I actually picked up the first book in the physical copy and I was enjoying it, but I wasn't feeling blown away by anything. But the audiobooks took it to the next level for me, and I think I really wish more people listen to the audiobooks because it's so underrated. I loved it and I would highly recommend them. The last book I wanted to mention is a very recent favorite, and it is I Was Anastasia by Ariel Lawhon, narrated by Jane Collingwood and Sian Thomas. This is a historical fiction book that follows sort of two parallel storylines or timelines. One is Anastasia Romanov right around the Russian Revolution outbreak. So it's the last few weeks of Anastasia Romanov's life. And the other timeline is Anna Anderson, who claimed to be the long-lost Anastasia Romanov. And the narration is done so that one woman is responsible for one of the characters and one is responsible for the other. So there are two parallel timelines and you're constantly shifting your focus. I think it is parallel chapters. So with a situation like this, with an audiobook, I think it really helps with the narration also be separate. I haven't actually listened to a lot of audiobooks that has had several narrators, and I think I haven't really enjoyed this format before because I don't like it when it's too much, when it's like a multicast thing. But with this book, I think it really worked with Jane Collingwood doing Anastasia Romanov and having much more of a youthful presence in her voice. And obviously because Anastasia is much younger than Anne Anderson, most of Anne Anderson's storyline is following her being much older, and Sian Thomas is an amazing narrator. I fell completely in love with her narration. I was so completely immersed in the book immediately because of her narration. I kind of just started listening to I Was Anastasia on a whim because I am really interested in the Romanov family and all of the stories around it, and especially the whole the fraud / claim to be Anastasia thing by Anne Anderson. I was really interested in that story already, but I started listening to the audiobook completely on a whim and fell in love with Sian Thomas' narration because it's so... I don't really know what it is about it. I think partly it just feels like it's very intimate. It feels like she's talking to you directly, like there's no in between. It doesn't feel like there's any mic or like speakers in between you and her voice. It feels very personable, and that is something that I felt with the other audiobook that I'm currently listening where she is narrating it. It is The Door by Magda Szabo. That is also a fantastic audiobook, but I haven't finished listening to it, so I can't completely endorse it yet. One of the things that I find difficult with audiobooks is that usually it takes me a while to get into the groove of the audiobook and the narration, to get sort of comfortable with the voice telling me the story, because there is a certain element of interpretation in the audiobook narration. But I find that the the narration done by Sean Thomas is amazing, and the narration also by Jane Collingwood is also really good. So I would highly recommend this audiobook as well. So these are 3 of my recent audiobook favorites that I really wanted to shout out, and that I hope you will check out if you're interested. Hopefully I will sort of return with more recommendations once I've listened to more audiobooks that I've really enjoyed. I think I am pretty picky when it comes to audiobooks. I can enjoy an audiobook and appreciate it without it being a standout, but for me, an audiobook that makes it that adds a new layer to the experience of reading it, that doesn't just tell the story of the original book, but that adds an extra something for you to experience in a new way or in a different way, is what makes an audiobook exceptional for me. And these 3 are both specific titles that I find exceptional, and the narrators are people to look out for. So those are the audiobooks that I wanted to recommend today. Do feel free to recommend me audiobooks that you've really loved and that has had that transportive effect on you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.